Welcome to this Appsmith live streaming event. We are about to get started and our host and guests are getting ready behind the scenes, testing the audio, making sure they look good on camera, but more importantly, getting prepared for your questions. But while you wait, feel yourself at home. Get some coffee or water and make sure to be comfortable to start learning and growing. In case you don't know what Appsmith is, hey, that's totally fine. We distinguish ourselves as the most powerful open source low-code platform, enabling developers to transform ideas into reality with unmatched speed, security, and efficiency. From small startups to large enterprises, Appsmith allows you to build enterprise applications that solves real business problems. You can build internal tools and dashboards connecting to more than 30 data sources, such as databases, SaaS platforms, or APIs. Then, build fast UIs using the drag and drop widgets from our large collection. And finally, define your business logic using JavaScript. If you are an experienced developer, you can build custom widgets with your preferred frameworks like React, Vue, or Angular. We literally support any JavaScript library and framework out there. But if you don't know how to code, that's fine. You can still connect your existing platforms like Salesforce, Google Sheets, or HubSpot and build incredible dashboards, reports, and apps without writing code. Alright, I got confirmation that our host and guests are prepared to get started. So say hi on the chat, start the conversation already, and let's kick things off. Howdy everyone and welcome to another live coding event. I'm extremely excited about this as well. And as usual, we have Joseph who is going to bring us a tons of knowledge about this topic because we're going to be building something awesome as usual today. But before I bring Joseph into the table, I want to remind you that we have every Friday the Friday Tech Workshop. Joseph is also doing amazing stuff every Friday, showcasing how to integrate libraries, how to bring third-party data sources into the table, and how to work with the JavaScript editor, which is amazingly powerful. So I wanted you to remind it about it. And right now you should see on the screen a QR code to go directly to our YouTube channel so you can subscribe in case you haven't. Also, last week we published a video introducing Appsmith workflows, which is an amazing way to build not only applications, but also to build a smart logic that happens behind the scenes whenever you want it to trigger. You can trigger via a webhook, like for example, via a cron job, or you can trigger on any action at your Appsmith application. So if you want something to happen behind the scenes, maybe to go to an audit log or to run something behind the scenes, Appsmith Workflows is perfect and integrates with all your data sources that you already have in your projects. And it's amazing. You should go and take a look in that video also right now published in YouTube. All right. Also, we have the monthly contest. As a reminder, every month we have a monthly contest. And if you scan the QR code on the screen, you should go directly to the documentation. This month is about SaaS integrations. So you should go and check it out because you can win amazing swag about different topics that we're having every month. And if this topic maybe is not something you feel comfortable with, building a template or an article about it, you can just wait to next month because we're going to be having different topics. Or if you feel that you have a topic you want to tell us about, make sure to go to Discord, talk to us, talk to me, to Joseph, and let us know what would you like us to build for the next monthly topic event. All right, let me bring Joseph into the table so we don't waste time and we start learning. Hey, Joseph, how's it going?
Hey, how's it going, man? Thanks for the intro.
Sure, doing awesome. So, Joseph, why don't you just tell us what are we going to be building today?
Yeah, so today we are going to build a Markdown editor. Now, we have a rich text editor that has a Markdown mode, but that's just for the input. So if you want to preload it with a value, you can use our rich text editor and queue up an initial value from Markdown or from rich text. But as soon as you start editing with it, like using that rich text editor, its output is always rich text. So we don't actually have a true Markdown editor. We can just display Markdown currently. So today we're going to build a full Markdown editor custom widget, and I'm going to do it in a way that anybody can copy this custom widget, connect their data, and use it to pull up an existing file or create a new one or update one, make it fully interactive to where you can write in Markdown, save it back in Markdown, instead of that getting converted to rich text like our current widget does. So
Awesome.
we're also going to look at a couple different libraries and just kind of talk about the approach more than jumping straight into the build.
Makes sense. All right, let's do it. That sounds good.
Cool. All right, well, let me go ahead and start sharing here. And first, we're going to look at just a couple of the libraries that could be used for this.
Mm-hmm.
And let me see. We know when you can see. Actually, give me just a second.
It's okay. Take your time.
I want to put it in 2 different windows, man. This is always a struggle for me to, so I can actually see what we're doing while we're talking and see this screen.
It's fine. While you do that, I want to encourage everyone to see the workflow video because I have a very interesting surprise at the beginning because I did like a short film about it because I wanted to present like the problem, and I really want to encourage you to go there and you might feel familiarized with some of the problems that we presented in that video, how Appsmith can solve all of those problems. All right, we see your screen, Joseph.
Okay, so to start out with here, I had this problem. I want to figure out how to make a Markdown editor and not do everything from scratch. So obviously looking for some type of library. My go-to one is JS Deliver. There's tons of ones that are ranked here. It's easy to see like the number of downloads and everything. So started out just searching Markdown, and like these aren't exactly what I'm looking for. These are Markdown parsers, right? This one's a parser. Serializer, that's kind of this is changing it to JSX, generating Markdown, like there's a lot of different things that are coming up that are not what I'm looking for. So what I really need is a Markdown editor. And once you search for that, there's 2 here that are over 5 million downloads, and then everything else is nowhere close to that. So like that's where I started. So looking at these 2, you can see this one's definitely higher. I ended up going with the second highest one here, and I just wanted to show why, what I'm comparing here and why I went with this particular one. So I'm going to look at the one we're using first, because I don't want to focus too much on the other one. But you can see here where he talks about it's a fork of simple MDE, and he made the fork for a certain reason. And if you go here, he just talks about how he put in a pull request to add some features, and the project was dormant and it's been sitting there since 2017 with no changes. And he had some features he wanted to add. So he went ahead and forked it and added it to his since the project wasn't active and they weren't responding to his PR there. So just to look at the other one real quick, if you look at simple MDE, the one that he forked, there's 2 vulnerabilities that haven't been fixed. And if you go to the repo, 7 years since
Right.
activity. But then the one that was forked that I ended up using, this one, there's an edit from a month ago. And 0 vulnerabilities. So, I don't just randomly pick the first one. I kind of compare and look at those kind of things. So I just thought it'd be helpful to show people why I went with this one before we jump straight into using it. So,
and I think that's super valuable because like the fact that Appsmith is so open for you to bring any JavaScript library into the table doesn't mean that that's not going to impact positively or negatively in your app performance or how it's going to behave. Because like if you bring a library that has no support, a tons of vulnerabilities, that's bad. Although Appsmith is built correctly and we have amazing and strict security policies, now that you have the ability to bring your own JavaScript libraries, you have to make sure that you do this kind of a scrutiny, right? Like make sure to check your JavaScript libraries, that they have good maintenance, that they have good support. So I think that type of debugging of the libraries that you just made is a good recommendation in general terms.
Yeah, and I go through that same kind of process each time. I'll start out with just a general search and look at the number of downloads, this just a starting point. But then that's not the only criteria. You really want to look more. And the one I went with was the second highest. So just look a little closer, and it might save you a lot of time in the long run.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. All right. So here's what we're building. This is just a a mock-up of what the final rich text editor is going to look like, or Markdown editor rather. And it's really easy to get started. The basics of it, I mean, it's one of the easiest custom widgets I ever got working out of the box. Just a couple steps here and we'll have it rendering. But then there's a ton of different options. Like you need a text area, and then you just like initialize it with EasyMDE, and you say that, like, if you don't tell it what text area, it just assumes the first one. So like that's enough code for it to render, and that's all you got to do. Or you can target a certain div by its ID, and you can get the value with, once you've initialized it, you can get the value with .value, or you can set it with .value with a parameter in there. So the basics, super simple. Then there's like just tons and tons of different options. So what we're going to do is get the basics working, and then see what we still want to add and what features that we need from those options. And I think with that, we'll go ahead and jump into the editor here. So here's a real basic version of what we're going to build. I don't have too much working yet. I didn't want to work too far ahead, but just to kind of have something to show, so you know what direction we're going in here. I want to be able to queue up a existing Markdown file. So selecting a row here preloads the Markdown editor. There's a side-by-side mode, or you can just type here and have the full width. There's like a full preview mode, or the side-by-side here. So you can select different ones and preload it. You can type in here and add whatever content you want. And then there's a save button, which is not there by default. And if I look in the console here, clear this out and click save. Actually, this one, clear this one and click save. There it is, one user message. And you can see the value here. It's saved to the console. You can see the console part, right?
Yep, we see the console.
Cool. So so that much is working, but the save button is only tied to a single line that says console.log. It has not escaped the custom widget yet. It's the data is still like trapped in the custom widget, and we're not saving it anywhere. So there's a lot left to do, but we can get the basics of it just rendering really easy, and then we'll look at tying it into the rest of an app and making it to where we can preload and save content and all that. So let's go ahead and start a new page. And I'll drag in a new custom widget. Okay, so we go to edit the source of this. And I'm just going to clear out everything from this default starter widget. Okay, so over here to the HTML side and back to the docs here. So you can install it via NPM, but with a custom widget, you have to use a CDN link here. So there's one for the CSS and then one for the script. So I'll copy both of those. And actually, I'm going to use the ones from JS Deliver. It gives two options here. But since I'm using the docs here from JS Deliver, I guess I'll use theirs just to make sure it's consistent. So back here, we'll put this in the HTML side. There's no content yet, just importing the CSS and a script. And I like to keep an eye on the errors here. Every time you make a change or add a function or paste in some link, just keep an eye on the console. When that error comes in, that's your clue. Otherwise, you're like trying to comment out multiple lines and figuring out what part caused it. So don't get too far ahead and then notice 10 steps later that you got in there. But so far, so good. So let's copy this next section here. So we have the CSS and a script that we're importing, a completely empty text area here, and then a script that just says it's defining a new EasyMDE, and let's see what happens. All right, man, that's it. I guess we're done. Yeah, what do we do for the rest of the hour now?
Well, thank you everyone who just joined. We just finished. That was easy. 5 lines of code. That's how we made it so easy for you.
Yeah. So honestly, this one was really, really easy to get working. Just to get
Nice.
rendering. There, it's not done. There's a lot left that we need to tie in, but a lot of times just getting to this point is a lot harder.
Yes.
The docs examples don't give you these CDN links with a full external URL. It'll be like a relative path. And so you
Hmm.
have to know to switch that out. Sometimes the function, the way that it's referenced, if it doesn't import right, it might be some other like easy MDE dot easy
Right.
MDE, or, like it's just little things that can take a long time to get from a docs example to it like rendering here. But yeah, this one is one of the easiest ones I've ever done. You just paste in those two and it's at least rendering and there's something, right? So
Yeah. And we have seen some comments from the community on Discord and other mediums, which is like, some JavaScript libraries doesn't work, but it's not that they don't work. It's that the way they're initiated, or the way they're provisioned, or the structure of the HTML they need, it's
mhm,
very different. So you have to, you know, uh, test and try for different libraries. But this one was just a breeze. Like, it was so easy, right?
yeah. Yeah, man. So this much definitely was.
Mhm.
The next part was a little tricky, and I'll be honest, I ended up using ChatGTP, and I think what I'm going to do now is we're going to ask it again, just so you can see like how I use it to solve stuff like this. So
Yeah.
instead of showing you the answer I got from from ChatGTP earlier, we'll do it again and see how it works. So I
Awesome.
want to add a save button. Um, let's look at the docs again. So there's an autosave feature, which actually sounds really cool, but that also is tying in something running on a timer. And, I don't want to get too technical on it. We're just trying to get the basics working. So where else is save? We can add a save button. And I'm trying to remember the name of the function, the option here that it ties with. But let's just take what we have so far. I'm going to copy this, head over to ChatGTP, and paste it in here and say add a save button.
And this is awesome because, I mean, ChatGPT and all of these AI things are tools. We don't have to push them out, or just avoid saying I use AI. I mean, it's great. It's
Yeah.
part of the tools that we have now at our disposal.
Okay, now you can see that it has added a save button
Hmm.
here outside of it's inside the custom widget. It's outside of the text area, which is the majority
The
of this
editor,
custom widget.
right?
Um, so there is a save button, and it's adding an event listener and running the save content, which does a console.log. So if I put some text in here and click, let's show the console here so we can see it show up, and then click save, there it is. So it basically did what I asked. It added a save button, and it's calling a function, and then we could add our own logic here in place of the console.log. But this is not the type of save button I wanted. Like, there's an option to put it up here in the toolbar. And I think they might show that in the docs here. Where was that screenshot? Here we go. This one
Hmm.
doesn't have it, but maybe the live demo. Somewhere I saw it and decided I wanted to tie that in. So let's go back and tell it, no, we want the save button inside the Markdown toolbar.
Hmm.
And this is where it gets interesting. The code gets way longer to add the one button.
Yeah.
And that's why I wanted to walk through this part and show you like how I arrived at it or whatever. So let's copy this, test it out. Okay, so now there's a save button up here instead of
Hmm.
outside of the text area, which is what I wanted the first time, right? But this toolbar array, there's a list item here, right? It's an array of string, 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 string,
Hmm.
and then an object, which is kind of weird because usually when you got an array, they're all the same data type.
Hmm.
But this takes an array of strings and or objects that represent each button that you want in the toolbar. And then you give it a string of a horizontal line there, a pipe or whatever, to create these dividers. So it's grouping these. And the thing I don't like about this library, it's just a little thing. It's not, not a huge deal, but what kind of annoys me is there's these helpful default buttons that are available when you don't put anything extra in here. When you just say, give me a new easy MDE. And then those are the default buttons. As soon as you want to add one button of your own that's not one of the defaults, you have to list all of them. Like you can't just add one. That's what like that just made me have to go dig and find the names of all these things I wanted to add just to add one thing. And luckily ChatGPT made that pretty easy, but yeah, that's
so
what's going on.
we give you everything out of the box, or you tell us exactly what you want.
Yeah, but you can't just incrementally add that one. Maybe there's a different function to like initialize it and then just add one. I don't know. I didn't dig that far, but anyway, that's where we're at. So it had to re-add, specifically naming all these ones just so that we could add this one, which is the save. So its name is save, its action is a function, and then it's pretty much the same thing that was outside of the text area before when it was a button down here. So you can use font awesome icons here, and if you wanted to add your own button that does something specific to your app, like what we're building here is just a Markdown editor. You might build an app that uses that and then also sends that data to Slack. Like Slack can take an incoming webhook and post a message that's Markdown, and it'll like turn that into a formatted message. So there's like lots of different things. You might add your own custom button, tell it what name to have, what icon, and what function to run. So that's really cool. This is an awesome, like powerful library. And you could add those buttons outside the custom widget too, but the fact that you can just arbitrarily pick an icon, give it a name, and tie in a function and just make one new button up here, and that can trigger something outside of the Markdown editor. I think that's pretty cool. So next thing, let's see. We want to get that save button to do something outside, to get the data out of the custom widget, basically. So back to the docs. You can create one like this. You can target a div by the ID there. Editor functions. To get the content, it's just easy mde.value. So we could assign something to this, like const whatever equals this, or we can update it this way. So first, I want my save button to grab the contents and get it out of the custom widget so we can do something with it in the rest of the app. So let's save it back to the model. And this is a good time to break this apart from the HTML and JS, because like right now we're not using these other sides here at all.
Exactly.
It works, but there's only so much you can do right here, and we need to use the Appsmith OnReady and OnModelUpdate right now. So we need to move this over to the script side. So I'm going to cut all that out, get rid of these empty script tags, and paste the JS back over here. And now like I said, keep an eye on the errors and stuff, right? We just got a warning. It's not an error, but it does say that we're missing an Appsmith OnReady function. So whenever you're using the JS here in a custom widget, you don't have to always put everything in an Appsmith OnReady. You can see that this is working to an extent. But as soon as you're relying on data to come in from outside the custom widget, now you need the OnReady. Because right now, this is like a standalone thing. It's importing its own library, right? It's not dependent on anything outside of the custom widget yet. If we want to pass in data, now we need to use the OnReady. So I'm going to cut all this out again and put in an appsmith.onReady function, which takes a function as its parameter. So OnReady is going to do something, whatever function you put in here. And then inside of this, we'll just paste all that code again. So we're back to it working, and that warning is gone now that we were missing an OnReady. So we've just kind of resolved some errors, moved some code around, but it's effectively working the exact same way. We haven't added anything yet. I'm trying to get it to really save something right here. So instead of the console.log, we want to update the Appsmith model. And every custom widget has this model. Right now, you can see it's this tips array, which is the data that preloads the default custom widget. When you drag in a blank one, and it's just got like the next button to cycle through these tips. So that's that default code here. What we really want to do is have some dynamic data that we can pass in here. So I'm going to have an object with a markdown string, and I'll just put that for now. That should show as a header. So now instead of that tips array, go back to the custom widget editor, you can see that the live model is preloaded with that value. So now I've got somewhere in the model. I don't really need to have a object ahead of time that has a markdown property. I could have just like added that to start with, but we want it kind of bi-directional. We want to be able to pass data in and have a place to save it when it comes out. So I'm going to use that same point for both of them. So right now I want to update this model, the dot markdown, with the value from the editor. So instead of this, we'll say Appsmith dot update model, and then this function takes an object, and it will merge in the object with anything that's already there. So if I don't call it markdown, I'll just call it test. We want to add an object to the model, and I still want to use the value from the editor. So that's easymde.value. And let's try. See, it didn't erase the existing one. It didn't overwrite it. It's merging in the data. Okay. Right. I actually do want to use the markdown one, but I thought that would be a cool way to show how it merges with the existing data, and then it will overwrite the data of an existing field. And so put something new here. So it overwrote this one, but it left the old one. And, now I don't want test there, but that'll go away the first time we refresh. So
yeah.
Okay. So our save button is getting data outside of the custom widget now. But imagine you had an API here, and like you really need to trigger this API to save it, right? All it's done is got the data out of the custom widget into not the default model, the live model. So the default model is the thing that preloads the widget, its initial state, and that hasn't changed. That's like part of the configuration of the widget. You can make this dynamic and change what's going in there, but it's still just the initial state. What we want to do is look at the value inside there. Let's use the rich text editor this time because it can display markdown. And so I'm going to change its default value to look at custom one.model.markdown. Okay. And then if I tell it the input is markdown, you see the difference there. It's rendering the markdown. So our rich text editor widget, it can render markdown just fine as the input. It just doesn't let you write and output markdown, which is why we're building this. So we have got the data out of the custom widget by clicking save. Now I could go adding another button that grabs it from there to actually save it back to a database, right? But you don't want to have to like click save inside here to get the data out of it and then click this button again, right? What you really need is to trigger an action outside the custom widget from inside of it. So I have a sheet set up already with some data that I want to use here. I'm going to go ahead and connect this now so that we can tie in and do CRUD. It's real simple. Don't really want to focus too much on like the schema and setting up a data source and all that stuff. So all I have is a name column and markdown. Just so we got somewhere to save this. I'm going to add a new query. I've already set up that markdown data source for Google Sheets. And so first, let's just list the records that are in there. So I'm getting data from the spreadsheet, from the Markdown sheet. We'll run this. All right, we have our name column and then some Markdown that we could display and we could save back to that. So let's go back to the UI here. So we're not going to use this save button. We don't want to have to click one inside the widget and one outside. I'm going to add a table up here. And we'll connect that query I just created for the Google Sheet. Okay. So we were working on the save there. I think it might make more sense to do the preload, make it display the value coming from here first so I don't wipe it out with the save. And then we'll add the save, right? So we can select a row, get it to preload with that value, and then update it and save it back. So yeah, I'm going to bounce around here and started the save thing, but I'm going to pivot. So we want to pass in the selected row here. When I select this row and when I change it, we want that to update inside here. So back to the custom widget, I'm going to say this default model has a markdown property of table one selected row dot markdown. And then you can see here it starts with the word sample. Select this one. Back to the widget. There it is. So it is changing the default. But again, that's just the initial state when the widget loads. So let's see how that's affected then inside here. We can use, there's an initial value function that we can use to set what this thing starts at. So I'm going to make it the first property above toolbar here. And set it to just, oops. Okay, so that much is working. There's this initial value property, and you just tell it what you want it to be, and it'll start out with that value. Let's connect that to the Appsmith model then. We have that value coming in. I'm going to just declare it as a separate line here. Const md equals appsmith.model.markdown. And then we can say the initial value is the markdown here, MD. Okay, so it is pulling the value from the selected row of the table. What happens when it changes? Nothing. See?
Yeah, nothing's happening.
It reads it the first time around, but then it doesn't care that the model's changing. So now we need an on-model update.
Update.
Yeah. And, got to select it. Okay, so get this out of the way here. This is the whole Appsmith OnReady. If I try this out here, at the top level of the scope, I'm completely outside of the OnReady. Let's try an Appsmith OnModelUpdate out here, or OnModelChange. And this also takes the function as the parameter. And then inside of here, let's try setting that easy MDE value. So there's easy MDE dot value, and then you pass in a string. Uncaught reference easy MDE is not defined, but it is here, right? And then when you go to save it, it works here. So this is outside of the scope. For your on-model change doesn't necessarily have to be inside the OnReady. But if it's going to reference something that's only in this scope, then it does. So I'm going to cut this, and we want it after we initialize this. So I don't want to interrupt this whole config, this object here, just after that. Okay, so the error's gone now. On model change, we'll set the value. That was just a string, a placeholder to test it. Now, a mistake I've done before is I don't want to type all of appsmith.model.markdown, and I've already got this const defined up here. So I could just say on model change, set it to this. But the problem with that approach, it looks like it worked at first. This thing only gets defined once.
Yeah.
It's a snapshot of what the model was at that time. It's not up to date. So it's better to just do this again. I'm just going to grab the value and put it here, or I could copy this whole line.
Yeah.
That's tripped me up before, so I just wanted to call that out. So, another way you could do this is if you needed to change other stuff about this config, you could rerun the whole thing and initialize it. But I don't want to reset everything. I don't want to duplicate this code. And in this case, just running .value again is enough to keeps all the same buttons. You know, you don't have to reinitialize it. So let's see if we can switch rows now and if it updates. Cool. Okay.
There you go.
So now we'll go back to saving. I didn't want to save first and wipe out what was in there. So we got a save button. And when I click it, it is console logging. Let's make sure that's still working. Console. Maybe it's not going to show in this console here. I might have to make a custom widget editor part. But I think that's still working. We just need to tie it in to trigger something outside of the custom widget. Let's add a query so that we have something to trigger, and then we'll tie the two together.
Awesome.
So I've got the get query for listing the rows. I'm going to add another one to the Markdown Google Sheet here. Update row. We want to update one sheet row on this spreadsheet and the Markdown sheet. Okay. And then we need to know the row object here, which we can take that structure, the schema of it from right here. So this is what one row object should look like. And in the update body, so if I did that, it would update, it'd be hard coded, always update the first row here and put in these values, right? But I want to kind of piece together some stuff. I'm taking the Markdown part from inside that custom widget. I want the row number to come from the table. That's the row of the table that's currently selected. And then the name, you know, if we wanted to build a full CRUD thing here, I could do an input for the name that you can change it. I'm just focusing on the custom widget part right now, not trying to build a full CRUD app. So let's just connect the custom widget here. .model.markdown. And so we know the custom widget can preload, take in some Markdown. We can edit it and it saves it to the model, but then it's not coming out of the model. So this will grab it and put it into an API. The row that we want to update is going to come from that table selected row.row index. So row one selected, and there's some Markdown. Let's see. Now we need to trigger this when this save. So now this, we don't spend too much time down here doing events on the custom widget. I'm usually working inside the bigger editor. But this section, this lets you define an event name and then the actions tied to that event. And then you can trigger that event from inside the custom widget. I'm going to delete this default one here. And so I just deleted the actions associated with the event, but the event itself is still there. This UI, it makes sense once you understand it, but it's a little tricky at first. So you add an event, and that's just giving it a name. So we'll create this event, but it doesn't do anything yet. So this plus adds a completely new event that you would give another name, but we don't want to do that. This plus adds actions to this event. It just, I get it now. It's just, it takes a minute to wrap your head around all of it. So I've got an action called save. And when that action gets triggered, I want to run the update query.
Mm-hmm.
And then if that is successful, I want to see that difference in the table. So we got to run the get markdown again.
Mm-hmm.
And so this save action can now be triggered. It can be called from inside the custom widget code. So back to that editor. And right here is where it used to do the console log. Oh, that's why I didn't see it in the, I took that line out and only updated the model. That's why I didn't see it a minute ago. So now we want to add a line here, update the model first, and then call this action. Appsmith.trigger event, and then you just give it the name, which is save. I think we're just about there, man. I think it might actually save at this point. So
Change the title.
yeah. All right. I'm just kind of getting set up here so we can look for the change. So this is the one that's on.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see what happens. So it changed the selected row, but it did work.
Oh, there you go.
That's just a little bit of a glitch because I didn't have the first row selected, and after it refreshed the table when it got new data, it just went and selected this row instead. But it worked. There's the data. It updated this row in the sheet. And you wouldn't normally change it from here, but just to make sure it's preloading the new data as it comes in, let's check that out. Okay. So yeah, there's that value. I can remove that now. Get rid of this and save. Cool. Yeah. So it's just resetting the selected row. That's an easy fix.
Yeah.
Table widget. There's a default selected row, and it's hard coded to 0. It keeps going back there because that's what we're telling it, right? But
so what would you do? Like save the selected row index to like the Appsmith store, or
or just a page variable, like declare a variable and then update that. And you don't need to save it to the Appsmith store unless you want to persist the state in between pages, like if they completely close out the browser and come back. But I don't think you'd really need that for a selected row. You might want to use that state persistence for like if you had multiple row selection enabled, and they're like drafting something and they're going to come back on it. You could save all the rows that were selected that they were working on. That might be a useful thing, but I probably just a page variable. In a JS object, I wouldn't use. I try not to use the store unless I have to. It does have advantages with the persistence, but it's also worse for performance. So just helps to know the differences. And I default to using a variable mutation.
Okay, don't be me then. I overuse the Appsmith store, to be honest. I think
that's why we had it first. It's been around longer, so
yeah.
Let's see. I had some notes of things I wanted to make sure we got fixed over here. Let me check this out. We added the save button, got the button to save it to the model, and then from the model to actual query, and it preloads. Yeah, that was like the main pieces I wanted to get working, because out of the box, just those couple of lines that we pasted in got it to render. But then those are the extra things to make it fully functional, bi-directional, that you can preload some Markdown, edit it live, and then save it and get the data back out. So still not quite an hour. Tried to explain a little more and draw it out, but this is a pretty easy one, actually. Yeah. It was a fun one, though.
And it's so cool that you went all the way back to the data source and storing. We could have stopped in just sending the response back, outside of the custom widget. But the fact that you showcase how to even save it directly to a data source, in this case, a spreadsheet, but for everyone watching, it could be a database in MySQL, it could be a NoSQL database. It could be anything.
Yeah,
just data source.
So many different APIs for messaging and blog post. You could send, like we use Contentful, for our blog on our main website. We also have the community portal. Anywhere that you're like posting content that you want to draft in Markdown, This would be like a cool central place to store and create the content and then be able to send it to multiple sources. And that could be whether it's a blog or maybe you got a work like Slack message and you want to also send it to email, basically draft and store it in one place and send it to multiple. So
Mhm.
lots of cool use cases for it. I just wanted to get the custom widget, the basics done. I'm going to clean this up a little bit and then publish it to the community template library. So it's like a standalone custom widget. And then later we're going to be working on a bigger project that will use that and create more of a full app and template around it.
Awesome. That's great. I mean, thank you, Joseph. It was a lot of a show here. Explain a lot of things for us. Not only how to correctly find the best library out there, how to bring it into the Appsmith custom widget, how to interact with the different methods that we provide for the Appsmith update model, and how to set up your model on Ready, etc. So I think this was like a masterclass for us.
Awesome, man. Well, thanks for hosting. Real quick, just wanted to mention the monthly contest again.
Mhm.
This month, the topic is SaaS integrations. So any of the data sources in Appsmith that are not an API and not one of the databases, there's Airtable, Google Sheets, HubSpot, AWS Lambda functions. I think there might be one or two more in there, but basically they're the ones where you don't have to go enable the API and create an API key and do everything through the API docs. The SaaS connectors let you just log in, click allow. And with Google Sheets, you can authorize a single sheet, which I recommend doing one data source, one sheet per data source. That way, if you need to deauthorize it later, you're not going to take down every app. If you create a single data source that can access all your sheets, it's easy until you need to revoke one, and then you break everything. So anyway, off on a tangent there, but the topic is SaaS integrations. The app that we built today would totally apply if somebody wanted to build something on top of Google Sheets like that. Doesn't matter what it is, just if you're using one of those SaaS integrations. And then last month our topic was custom widgets, which we used here today too. So there's a lot of overlap. It could be just anything using those SaaS integrations, HubSpot, Airtable. So got most of the month left still.
Yeah, and can people participate not only with templates, or is only templates, or can they do like an article or a
Oh yeah,
video themselves?
yeah, any content. And at first it was only templates, but we realized that sometimes that's a challenge, especially with certain types of data sources like Snowflake and Databricks and ones that like no, you're not going to pay to host that for free just so
Yeah,
people can look at a template, like whereas Google Sheets, you can build an app and you're not getting any extra cost for connecting to that sheet. So to address that, yeah, we're allowing blog posts, videos. You might build the template, but instead of sharing the app itself, take some screenshots and write a tutorial about how you made it, right? So you can still put that content out there. You can still have a chance of winning, but you don't have to worry about your live app or your data being out there.
exactly. And we are in the month of the fifth anniversary here at Appsmith, so you might win some different swag now that we are in the anniversary. So yeah, just make sure to participate. There's no losing in this. You're going to learn how to do things. You're going to contribute back to the community. The community portal use base is growing so much, and we have seen a lot of interactivity in the template section where people are posting their templates and other people are
Mhm.
using those templates. So again, it's not just about like winning, it's also about contributing back to the project and to other people who are using apps with this type of custom widgets, data sources, SaaS integrations, and what have you.
Yeah. We actually used a community template in one of our own internal tools, like a page from Sanjiv. He's one of our community leaders, and he
Hmm.
made this really cool Kanban board. And we took a page from that and incorporated it into a bigger app. So there's a lot of other stuff going on in the app, but I was kind of going through one of our internal tools and I recognized it. I'm like, hey, that's from the community. So it's really cool. Like we're actually using stuff that they made. They can use templates that we made, and everybody's just contributing and sharing the code.
Exactly. Well, Joseph, thank you so much for the time you spent today explaining us all of this amazingness. Everyone, we'll see you on the next one. Stay tuned to the events by visiting events.appsmith.com. Also, you can check our social media. We're on LinkedIn, Twitter, we're everywhere. Just find Appsmith. We're even on TikTok, and you can find some memes over there as well. So make sure to follow us everywhere. And again, stay tuned for upcoming events. And again, thank you so much, Joseph. Any closing words for today?
Yeah, just keep the templates and the community content coming, man. We love seeing what everybody's making, and definitely want to encourage others to post. If you've got anything that you want to share, this month is pretty easy because you can build just about anything on top of a Google Sheet or Airtable. So let's see what everybody can make.
All right. Thank you so much. Subscribe to YouTube and continue to learn about AppSmith every week. See you on the next one.
All right, thanks.
Bye